The Berlin Board of Education, committed to continuous improvement.
Welcome to our January 28th Board of Education meeting. We start all of our meetings. We start with the pledge, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I expect we have a pretty lengthy meeting this evening, but the business portion of it in the front side here should go pretty quickly. So with that, we will start with Jenna and a report from our students.
Okay, so today the last midterms happened and semester 2 started. And some of the spotlight games of the week that are coming up are the boys swimming are against Southington February 1st. And on February 2nd, ice hockey is playing Northeastern. And then girls basketball is playing Maloney on February 7th. That's it.
All right. Thank you very much, Jenna. Committee reports. Ed Resources Committee would be Adam, but Adam's not here. I think we did hold a meeting last Tuesday? Was it Tuesday? Last Tuesday in the morning. Just reviewing the budget, talking about some of the options that are that were brought forth through the budget, and overall what I don't even know how to explain it. Carrie, help me. Yeah, it was really just a review of the budget. At that point in time, we had questions surrounding some things for Mr. Kugno, but overall, most of that's going to come out tonight. So it was just kind of prepping for this evening for that meeting. So, Communications Committee.
Yep, so we held a meeting about a week and a half ago, 2 days after our last board meeting. So Jake, Tracy, Erin, and I sat down to discuss where we're going in the direction of our committee. We will be discussing later on in the meeting under new business communications to the public, the social media, and what the board thinks and feels and what direction, we should move forward with. But we're on hold right now with social media. We submitted our third column to the citizens, so 2 have been published so far. I hope you guys have been able to see them. I'm really excited that the Citizen is so graciously accepting these and publishing them. And we just submitted our third, which will be out on Thursday. And Jake started the 4th, which we'll do some work on, and he shared that document with the committee. At our meeting, we started looking at different communication plans other Board of Educations use. Erin shared that with us, so we have some work to do around seeing if we want to develop a communication plan, what we like, what we can do, what we're already doing, and just moving forward, making sure our education column is strong as we started out, and then once budget season is over, we can rediscuss to see if we want to pull back to bi-monthly or however we want to do it. But we're just trying to make sure we are communicating with the public, and it's definitely a challenge, but I think we are gaining some momentum. And that's all I have. You're welcome.
Just prior to this meeting, the ad hoc committee met. Ad hoc committee is made up of 3 committee chairs and the president, and this evening's meeting revolved around the policy regarding high school graduation, We'll be covering that again later, as we have an agenda item about the first read of that policy. That we will move over to correspondence to the board.
No correspondence in person.
That makes agenda item 2, subset C, very easy. We're going to check that off and move straight to audience of citizens. Is there anybody here who would like to address the Board of Education? No one's with. Mr. Richards.
Good evening, John Richards, 239 Hawthorne Drive. ERC committee members and Mr. Kugno and Mr. Benigni, I left a copy of 2 sets of papers, something I was hoping we might be able to discuss during your agenda item later. It's regarding the 10-year capital plan. The first 2 pages are a summary of where I think we ended the year, and it shows what got kept and what got cut. And then at the second page, it shows a split, schools versus town. But I think that the confusion, at least in my mind, is the 61 capital account really includes things that Doug Solich does for the buildings anyway. It isn't necessarily directly equivalent to your request for capital as you show it in the Board of Ed budget. So I think to open a discussion as to the second part, which is the 10-year plan, how it's built and how we might influence it, and certain elements that are in there. In particular, I think that the Board of Ed's annual maintenance fee is about 2/3 what it ought to be. But this is a document that's coming from the Capital Committee, and I think it's worth discussion, as we talked about at the last meeting, to say how do things that we need to get done for capital get into position. What's the flavor, or what's the, I guess appetite's probably a better word, for the town for capital, which is, it's really had its stomachs sewed up for many years, so it doesn't have a big appetite. But the notion that there isn't such a thing as a 10-year capital plan, I think, is important, and possibly how it can be plugged into so we can see how best to work at it from the Board of Ed's perspective. Second thing that I'd like to do, if I may, is pass out a sheet, just because I wrote down. I was going to give it to you and Brian and the board. It's not so much to everybody, or to the board members themselves, because this is the item is the notion of a joint Board of Finance, Board of Ed meeting. There was a date that was floated by Kevin Delaney, the town finance director, as Wednesday, the 20th of September. And it's this sheet.
The 20th.
September? Well, that would be very good. Thank you. 20th of February.
We can commit to September.
We should definitely not try to do it on September. But if I'm following what I think the plan is, you've got your budget discussion tonight as a later item. Then I've got a space there with some asterisks on it. In other words, when should this joint meeting happen? It should be probably where the asterisks for option 1 or option 2 are, and the proposal is even later. If I understand the superintendent's budget book, on February 11th, Jimmy, I said February, Good. February 11th, but thank you for the other. You're going to have a time that you're going to spend with the public, and then you're going to plan to vote on the budget, if I understand that. And then the budget ultimately has to be given to the town at some point. Kevin says the 26th, your book says the 22nd. That's just the difference between a Friday late or a Monday early. But the point is, one of the things that was discussed was, if the Board of Ed is proposing a 5.96% increase, and for the moment that's what's in front of you from the superintendent. If that's what you propose, how does that fit in with the big plans of the town? And the big plans of the town are controlled, where the purse strings are, A, with the council, and B, with the Board of Finance. And as we found last year, we didn't have a very good, how shall I say it, a cooperative spirit to say, well, where are you trying to head, where's the town trying to go? And I think that if you talk about it on the February 20th, it's going to be after you've already made a decision. If, for instance, the town were to say, well, we're trying to hold things within 1%, that's clearly going to be at odds with what you have already tried to formula. So rather than make the Board of Ed look like it's standing out in the open, trying to figure out what would be a good time for that. But I'm not sure, Matt, how that may have been proposed to you from the Board of Finance. I'm responding to it as an email to Board of Finance members saying, can we meet on the 20th of February? And I said, well, it could, but is that really the best time? In other words, how can we use it to be as productive as we can be and not be essentially bringing out the sticks at that point and aiming for each other's eye? So I'm tossing that out as a thought because I'm not sure how it was framed to the Board of Ed, but it just seems like it's late in the process and very late when you have to turn the budget in by Friday the 22nd. And I don't know how adjustments could be made to, and how would you even meet again? I don't know that the Board of Ed plans to meet between the 20th and the 22nd. So I'm just tossing it out there as a thought. The bottom part are some capital considerations that I was hoping to talk about, but audit to citizens typically is for things that aren't on the agenda. Perhaps I could have a couple moments when you're talking in your budget discussion, as we could discuss how we might approach capital.
So, John, in no particular order, but essentially the order you presented first is I appreciate the spreadsheets and the work you provided outlining of what a 10-year plan is and how we can use that tool to bring forth the Board of Education's long-term plan. And as you said, yes, there is an on-paper 10-year capital plan, but it's on paper, right? So some things go through, some things don't. Part two is regarding the dates and sequence of events. Without getting into the specifics, I can tell you that we were contacted by the Board of Finance asking for dates that we could meet with the Board of Finance. The initial dates, we had a number of us that were going to be out of town and wouldn't be able to make that. And quite frankly, as I sit here without my calendar for me, I don't know what day it's scheduled for. It may be the 20th, as you've already said. Is it the 20th? Okay. And I would agree.
Not September, as I said.
No, February. And I would agree that that would be after the Board of Education would have adopted the superintendent's budget, and there wouldn't be any opportunity for the Board of Education at that point to make any additional amendments. With that said, I'm not sure that by that point in time, the Board of Education would make any more amendments and we would push this forward as the Board of Education's budget. So, but I certainly will we'll consider the fact that if there was an opportunity to meet earlier, maybe that makes sense. I can reach out to Sam and we can look at what schedules look like. And so I actually appreciate you bringing that forward. So with that said, is there anybody else who would like to address the Board of Education from the audience of citizens? Seeing none, we will close audience of citizens. And we will move to the consent agenda. The consent agenda has the approval of minutes for the regular meeting of January 14th. Also, there is an overnight field trip request for Berlin High School to Hartford and Farmington, Connecticut for March 22nd to March 24th. It looks like about 20 students to attend the Youth and Government State Conference in Hartford. Is there anybody who would like to add or remove anything from the consent agenda? Seeing nothing, I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I have a motion from Carrie. Second. Second from Rich. Any discussion regarding the consent agenda as it lays? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 8-0. And we are to item number 5, new business. As I talked about earlier, in your packet is a policy review and revision for policy 6146, the high school graduation requirements. This is a first reading. As I said prior to this, We met as an ad hoc committee to be updated and so forth by Aaron McGurk. This policy has already gone through the Student Achievement Committee. This is the second committee that's reviewed it. Are there any questions regarding what was in the packet at this point in time? Hearing none. At this point, there will be a second reading with the intent to adopt on February the 11th. So should you have any questions prior to that meeting, please bring them forth to me so that I can get responses from Dr. McGurk and Mr. Benigni.
I would just like to make a point for those of you that haven't been in these conversations. This is very time sensitive. So if there are any questions, get them in advance, please, and we can try to answer them before that meeting, at least to try to lay some concerns that may be out there, if there's any at all.
Okay. Moving to communications with the public. This is an open, free-flowing conversation amongst the board relative to our position with communications with the public. As Julie has already outlined, we have started our column in the Berlin Citizen. The third one will appear on Thursday of this week. We have, honestly, we'd like to have some pretty open and honest conversation about Facebook and Twitter and how we want to use that. And it looks like we have the option of discontinuing the bulletin board to be discussed. So, Julie, I'm going to turn this over to you and let you continue my preface and take it from there.
Yeah, so thank you, Matt. I think it would be easiest to start out right now with the Berlin Citizen column. I think that's going to be the easiest and quickest. So if you guys you want to share your thoughts, any ideas, suggestions on what we could write, but as I've already shared twice with the board, now the column is just going to be factual information, the work we're doing. This week's column was basically the Board of Ed's been busy. Like, we had a retreat and we've been working on budget stuff, and the previous column was about the high school program of studies, and then the first column was just like an introductory. So we definitely need some ideas let's just talk about the column right now, and then we'll shift gears into social media, and then we'll shift gears into just any other communication suggestions. But it'll be easiest for me to take notes and write down your feedback.
Is it only Board of Ed members that are going to add something to the column, or can it be for administrator, staff, things that are going on in the schools? What is it? So is it just for us?
The vision of it, the vision is a regular column that will be highlighting what's happening Board of Ed school-wise. But there are certainly reservations about putting a lot more work on a lot of other people, so we want to start out with it being, kind of our thing. Brian has helped tremendously, as well as Erin. So they're helping right now. I don't know, Brian, do you want to share a little bit more your thoughts, so I'm not speaking on your behalf?
No, I just think there's time relevant things that we want to talk about sometimes. So the first one was about the column, what was going to take place and about the board in general. The second one really was about the graduation, and the third one, it was really like just an update of what's been going on in the business of the board. But now as we get into budget season, I think there's things that we need to start putting in weekly about the budget. But I even think after that, we get close to graduation and the time of the year, if there's snow days and various events that the board, I think it's important that we use it as a tool that can be from the board as well as from administration. If there's something taking place in the school, like, this McGee's 50th anniversary, that might be relevant to put in there, because many of the community members might went to school at McGee, so that might be I think there's a way to highlight whatever's coming forward in the few weeks beyond the paper, really get the word out. Speaking of the bulletin board, Matt mentioned, the bulletin board is really from the minutes of the board meeting, and I'm not so sure how much it's read, and it's really meaningful too. I think the column is a better place to get the word out.
I didn't even know the bulletin board existed until Erin brought that to our attention. and it's my 4th year now on the board. So unfortunately, I hate to even say that because I know someone does a lot of work around the bulletin board, but. So,
Will be difficult to maintain the weekly.
well, that's what
Does
we
it have
talked
to be
about.
weekly? Can
It doesn't, no, and that's something we had a lot of discussion around, going back and forth on, is it gonna be weekly or bi-monthly? And, you know, we came to the conclusion that we can really reassess in 4, 6, 8 weeks and say, okay, how is this impacting all of us? How is this going? But I think starting out, making it weekly to train the reader's eyes to look for that, that's the best way to start. But then if we wanna scale back, we scale back.
Can it be weekly when we need it to be weekly and then scale back, but then, you know, as needed? Or, do you know what I'm saying? Is it gonna need to be a certain format? So for instance.
They're so flexible.
There's certain times that are obviously we have more going on than other times.
Absolutely.
So that's what I'm.
So basically, when I called the Citizen, it was easier than I anticipated. They basically said, it's your community's paper, you guys put what you want in it, and we will do our best to accommodate you. And I was like, wow, that's amazing, that's a lot easier than I thought it would be. They said some weeks they might not be able to publish it, some weeks it might get pushed back. So with that being said, we might be backed up a week, which is actually kind of a good thing. I'm thinking as budget season ends, it's gonna be interesting to see the correlation between, did we get more voters this year? Did we have a higher turnout of voters? Were people more informed? Were we hearing less from people in town that they weren't informed? I don't know, but it really depends on how it goes. I think, you know, the vision of it, Jake and I, when we attended the CABE conference, we sat in a really good session with 2 women who work with the Rusk Alliance, and that was actually a suggestion they had made. And then I followed up the conversation with both of them separately, which I had shared with both of you, all of you, when I had the slides. And they said, yeah, we think that's great. If you can pull it off weekly, great. But I think it's really just a space where if school administration or even teachers or other people kind of want to jump on down the road. But I think as we start, it needs to just, we should, you know, one thing we've been trying to be mindful of is not punting the work to others, though Brian and Erin have gotten the work punted to them, but really not like all of you.
I just wanted to chime in and just say, you know, I really appreciate Julia, you know, starting this up, getting right into it. I think it's off to a great start. I think she's kind of downplaying it. I mean, don't think it's like, we have no idea, what do you guys think? Because there was a brainstorming session in our last communications committee, and we had more than a dozen different ideas. And to kind of give you kind of a framework of it, I think it's a little bit of an opportunity to set the record straight. So I think, you know, whenever there's things that maybe are misinterpreted, you know, to really expose kind of the nuts and bolts of what's actually going on, as opposed to maybe what you've heard hearsay and third hand. So I think it's a great opportunity to do that. And there's really probably about a dozen different ideas that we've already kind of, you know, are bouncing off each other. So if there's any other opportunities or any other things that we want to think that, you know, maybe people don't really have a full picture of what actually goes on.
And that's exactly what we did, and that's when Erin stepped in and wrote last week's about the program of study changes, because there was all that excitement on Facebook. So thank you, Jake.
I like the perspective of set the record straight, you know, that it's factual information that speaks to other places where we may not be able to communicate. And this is our place. I think I like that perspective, Jake, a lot.
What else do you guys have on the questions, comments, feedback?
I'm looking at the timing on this and noticing that the special budget meeting is on February 11th.
Mhm.
Are we using the column at all to encourage people to attend that
Yep.
meeting? Okay.
I can tell you what the one we just submitted says. So we submit it every Wednesday, every Friday. So it says, we encourage citizens to attend any of the upcoming meetings. By attending, you will have a greater understanding of the Berlin Public Schools and the budget required to sustain and move the district forward, allowing options and opportunities for all students. February meeting dates, February 11th at BHS and February 25th at Hubbard School. So, and then previously, if you want, in the previous paragraph, it says, if you want to learn more about the needs of the Berlin School, please join the Board of Ed on Monday, February 11th at 5:45 at Berlin High. So the paragraph before, and then Brian wrote this one up, he concluded with that. So, yes.
And because it's so timely, we could remind people of those meetings, as those meetings, we get close to those meetings, maybe there'll be more details of what's going to be at the meeting. So I think we can kind of use it as a reminder of, especially in this time of the season.
So, PTO meetings are coming up, where I'd like to be at the PTO meeting. So, in this week, so we could align, put out that discussion.
So the weekly column, I will tell you that Friday at 5 o'clock comes very fast.
Very fast.
To where weekly is definitely a challenge, and yes, unfortunately, we have looked to Brian and looked to Aaron on a couple of occasions now. We've done 3. 2 of them went to Brian and Aaron, so we started doing the math. We made a commitment not to push it down,
Right.
and yet we have in order to get the column out. I think that from the Friday perspective, that will get easier to do as now we're kind of finalizing our budget discussions and we can make definite commitments to what we are adopting and are asking for, right? We're still having conversations around that, but once that's settled, then those pieces will be, we should start to put those pieces in the next columns, right? Because instantly there will be all kinds of rumors and hearsay out there, and no disrespect to the people who are here today, but as you can see, there's not a lot of people who are doing the rumors and hearsay. They're not here. So with that said, we should be able to keep going. I would advocate, I think, that once we get through budget season, we may scale it back to every other week, just because it is a challenge to get to every Friday.
And it comes quick, like you said, like shockingly quick.
Right, like it's Monday night and I'm already worried about it.
Yeah.
More so than.
And then before
the
you
other
know it,
half.
it's Friday at 5:45 and we're all frantically texting, did it get out?
Right.
So,
So I'm gonna transition us to the social media portion.
Okay.
We've had multiple conversations amongst the group about Facebook, Twitter, how we want to use it, do we want to use it, is it open, can people post on it, what is the risk, what is so forth. And because of all of those questions, we haven't moved it forward. I know we have a framework set up and we could launch, but we have not at this point, and I will preface this with my own fear is we're gonna put information out and all it is gonna be is an attack zone for anybody who wants to say terrible things about what the Board of Education is doing or not doing. But also keep in consideration is I don't have Facebook and I don't have Twitter, nor do I intend on getting them. So I am a social media non-participant. So I now rely on the rest of you for that kind of world. So with that, I'm stepping out of this and you're on.
so our committee has had a ton of discussion around this. We already shared the slides, like there's an opportunity to have a Facebook group, a Facebook page, or utilize the town pages. So I think we should hear from the board at this point.
I think that it's a lot of work to maintain it, to find someone to maintain it. And it opens ourselves up for maybe comments that, I don't know, unfavorable. I mean, that's what it's supposed to do as well, for conversation. But in saying that, we have a district, there's a district, not a district, do we have a district, or is it the high school? Each of the PTOs has one, except I don't know if Hubbard has one, but, so all the PTOs have one, and then the high school, does the high school?
Do you mean
Facebook.
Facebook page?
For Facebook, yes.
High school
And is
does,
it,
yeah.
is the high school, who's that run by? That's not,
Helen.
all right, so Helen runs that one.
Yep.
So, my opinion is I like to keep what's going on at each of the schools, and then they can comment on that if they go to, Berlin Buzz, which we know that they do. Because now we have the newspaper where we're providing factual information. You can get that information online if you want to read it, though. I'm sure we'll get a commentary at some point in the newspaper about whatever's being written. I think it's a lot of work to, again, we're all volunteers ourselves, we have stuff going on. I don't know, I think it would be difficult to.
And not to steer you one way or the other, but exactly what you said is with both of the women, the consultants I spoke with from the Resk Alliance, or part of two different Resks, they said exactly the same thing. So I am someone who started out 100% for it, like let's go, let's launch this. And then as I, listened to more people and heard more suggestions, that was kind of exactly what they said. They said it's going to be a lot to maintain. They said it really opens ourselves up. They said for a volunteer position, it is a whole lot of work. And they also said, if those other pages already have the following, why recreate the wheel? And why don't we try and push our stuff out through that? But
And I wouldn't do the one where our personal Facebook is associated.
right, so we would
which
do
is
a page, not a group. So you would say a page, right? Okay.
So in our committee, the exact same issues came up, and I think we don't want to see that. I think ultimately we wanted to engage. We want to engage with the public. It does seem like there are a fair amount of pages already that we could look and hear the pulse of the public. And with this new created column, we have an opportunity to get the information out. Is it going to the right people? Don't know. Don't know if it would if we had our own page. Maybe there's an opportunity to get shared onto other pages. That would be good. But I think with the existing infrastructure that we have, maybe we could accomplish.
So, Tim, what do you think?
I don't think we have the bandwidth to maintain it reliably long term. I think there's going to be maybe an initial effort of months that we're all going to go, whoever gets appointed to that, or everybody contributes. But then over time, it'll become a direct in a volunteer capacity. And then come November, when the board changes
over.
Are the three people who come on going to want to do it? If it's the same people or different people, right? And being able to maintain that when there's no compelling reason to do it. As Brian has said, we've got web administrators who receive a stipend at all the schools to do that. It's part of their job to do that work. And they're expected to contribute to that content based on that. There's no stipend coming here. We didn't work that into the budget this year, did we?
I don't know that.
Right.
And Tim, that's exactly what the consultant said too. They said the exact same thing, board turnover is every year, so.
Well, and Aaron does Twitter, right? Aaron, you do Twitter, so information is,
Brian has Twitter.
He doesn't use that.
I
follow him.
Quite impressive.
So
we're getting, so
I haven't made
information's getting
my
out
post,
there.
I haven't made my post, but I do that.
Right now, we have Berlin High School Twitter account. All of the elementary principals, middle school principals have Twitter accounts. So the schools are actively pushing things out on Twitter. And we've just recently linked those onto the main page of the district website so that it's updated on the district website with the feed of new information from Twitter. And the beauty of doing it through Twitter is that you're harnessing about 60 educators from across the district who have read and agreed to social media guidelines for what they post. But all of those people are contributing instead of it falling off a single individual. And that's one of the ways that to keep it going.
Volume certainly is powerful because coming up with new content all the time is
And that's what they also said, we have to make sure our content is constantly updated, engaging, or people won't be following it. So Carrie, what are your thoughts on
hidden
this?
videos won't cut.
My thoughts are that if we're looking to get information out to the public, we have multiple routes by which to do that already. and Facebook, in my opinion. People are more inclined to respond negatively to posts than
Keyboard
positive.
warriors, yes.
So I say if we're looking to engage the public, as Jake said, we have multiple routes by which to do that already established, and the citizen being the newest of those. But I would not necessarily be in favor at this point, given all that has been presented to this point.
Okay. Thanks, Rich.
Yeah.
Same.
No, and actually, before you go, one thing I was
There's their
thinking.
first post.
Is there a way, and I agree with everything that's been said here, especially the idea you can't have a forum where there's comments coming back. But I'm wondering, is there any way to use any social media, or maybe even the district website, to also put out the article that we're putting to the citizen? Because not everybody's looking at the citizen. Are there other ways to simply get out and put that same article, so it's not extra work, but to post it somewhere?
The citizen posts it on Facebook.
Right, but is
Okay.
then there a way to where like Berlin High School could post that up on their page?
That's what I'm wondering.
Or the other
Or maybe
schools
all the
could-
schools could.
And that's funny, you read my mind, but I wasn't able to articulate that. I was thinking it, but yeah, so
Wouldn't
I
require extra work, except posting it and copying it to a couple different spots.
emailing it out to a
To
few
the-
people.
Or whoever controls the Facebook pages at the 5 schools, yeah.
Or even the PTOs could get it out
We
through.
Yeah.
could create a space on the Berlin Public Schools district website to post it
It's a good idea.
We could post a comment.
Yeah.
That's the webmaster would do that.
And I do think pushing it out to Facebook to the school sites as well would be a very good idea.
Just a note, some high schools, especially private high schools like Xavier, actually has a media specialist, and that is their sole job. Website, social media, video content, Twitter, Facebook, posts from athletics to academic events to happenings. You actually do interviews and posting. But that person, that's their sole job to do that. So it's always current, up to date. I worry about the same thing that others have said about it being current, and that what's getting posted is relevant.
Do you have any?
Have we even talked about this with people like Shingle Goodwin and the legal arm of
We know some districts do it, so.
That's another dangerous line. to be
Ellington
walking.
does it, I looked through their page. They basically post their board minutes. Not too many likes or comments, pretty low key. I was thinking like one of the benefits would be by having a page is we could create events for board meetings, for other type of events where we voting to inform people, because I know even on my phone with Facebook, I get alerts. Like, even if I'm not going, even if I haven't responded, like, oh, Carrie Hasu is interested in this event, like, I don't care what Carrie is interested in, but like, it just keeps harassing me about events, so. That was like one of the flip sides to it. And then again, going back to the correlation of voter turnout, if we put this initiative in place, that would be also kind of interesting to see. But I think to Rich's point, if we are able to get the other pages to post the column, I don't know, that could be a good starting point. Do you want to add anything? You can, you haven't said anything.
I do feel strongly about it. I think our hearts are in the right place, and I think that we all have a common goal of getting information out to the public. I think we all want it. I think we're, like I said, we have good heart, like our hearts are in the right place with this. I think it's just gonna tank. People like to feed on negativity, and we have so many avenues. I think we should try those, see how they work, and go from there.
Anyone else have, do you want to?
Jenna, going to chime in? You can say no.
I don't really know. I don't really know how to use Facebook, so that part.
It's kind of like my parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. My parents don't. So.
That's okay.
Made us feel very old.
Thanks.
Snapchat, is that the thing?
Yeah, I use the Twitter. I follow the Berlin High School Twitter, but Facebook I've never really gotten into.
That's a good thing, stay away. So thank you everyone for your feedback. I think it's good to hear from everyone and hear what everyone has to say. So the last thing I just want to shift gears into, now that we've talked about the column and social media, what other suggestions or ideas might you have for ways to communicate with the town of Berlin?
I would make sure that in the articles that are going out in the Citizen, that we mention that there's Twitter and that the PTOs have, or Helen does the Facebook page. Let them know where the information is provided for them to see. And I think we should do it frequently. So either you have, once a month or every week or every 2 weeks, you say the same information at the bottom. For more information, or if you want, these are our outlets that you can see all this information.
It's a great idea.
It's great. The other thing we could do, we have a TriCast, which allows us to stream. So we could stream, such as the budget hearing. Now, some people might have to come out, but we could stream that live to the website and then publicize it as we stream. So it wouldn't be able to comment, but they could definitely see whatever questions are asked and hear the budget, and then it would be recorded. Obviously, we can post that on the website. So anyone who wasn't able to make the budget meeting could then hear and see the presentation. So I think if we use more streaming of events and things that take place, I know we have this evening at every board meeting, but there are events that could be streamed and put to the website, where we could have high school students and IT folk make that happen.
I think that's a really good idea.
That's great experience for them to do.
Another thing that we had come up with in the meeting, and I know we had already mentioned this, instead of doing Board of Ed school reps, which we had talked about 2 years ago, is, and I know Brian's overly busy and works really hard, but eventually in his weekly memo, there will be like a Google sheet with some sign up with the upcoming event. So then we as board members can say, like if Jamie's already gonna be at that school because her kids go there, I can sign up and be at the school and have my presence known, or I don't have anything going on Tuesdays, I can go to this high school event. So we have a place where we can kind of always be faces in the community, because I think that's also another way of communicating with the public. Though we are not going out, posting social media posts or the Citizen, by hearing and being like a temperature gauge of what the community is saying, bringing it back to the board, but also being able to interact and communicate. That's an important part of our communications committee.
We're looking into that. The problem we're having is we want to self-populate the events, because each school, we don't have a central person loading the events. Each school populates the events. We want to populate from the web calendar onto the school doc, so that whatever events are added, they then just show up and you can sign up for. So once we figure that part out, we'll have that up for you.
So just keep an eye out for it. But what were you gonna say? What were you gonna say, Brian?
No, we'll have that up for you. We could do it right now as a static, here's the events, but some events keep changing and added, or if there's an adjustment to that, we wouldn't want the wrong event there. So we're trying to have it automatically populate the events to the school doc so that you can sign up.
And whether we have like a table or a room, if it's conferences, and this is something we discussed in our meeting, in the communications meeting, if it's conferences, we could say, there could be like a sign, the Board of Ed will be in room 100 if you want to pop it and talk to them, or we could be out by the entrance, but we need to make sure people know that we are Board of Ed members and we are available, rather than just, out socializing, and because people might not know who I am or who Rich is, well, they probably all know who you are, but but making ourselves available in that sense, where someone who isn't active in the community would know where to find us. Any other suggestions of great ideas that are going around in your head?
Not an idea, I just want to make sure we come back to the bulletin board, and if we have an agreement whether or not anyone is utilizing that, because people aren't utilizing it, just continue it.
Do you know how many beds it
I don't know exactly, but I know it's not really well subscribed to. And it hasn't been for a while.
That's it.
Who maintains that now?
Debbie maintains it, it comes off the minutes, and it's really just short captions of the minutes from the purpose.
But we post all of our minutes, correct?
Right.
So there's nothing else that goes there. So that's in there.
Kind of redundant.
Yeah, and the interesting stuff going on, there's gonna be in the paper, so.
I don't know if they can-
Or parents are gonna understand that.
I
She
don't.
knew.
Oh, you knew
But she was
I think there's other sources.
going through the
I was
website.
reading,
The
going,
minutes to read it, it may
I
not
had
be
a
the
double
same format,
minutes.
but it's pretty
I'll
close.
figure it out.
I don't think, the total both is really just a synopsis of what took place in the meeting.
So then what I would say is, unless there's an objection, I think that it's okay to discontinue the bulletin board, but in the event you get a significant number of pushback, there's no reason you can't reinstate it.
How about some type of, well,
Pretty good way to find out if
Left
anybody
hand.
was really looking at it, right, is now it's not gonna be there. Tim?
or maybe a last message saying this is gonna be the last bulletin board for future reference, this information
To
is here.
reference to where it's gonna
Yep,
be. Yeah.
yep, that sounds
Instead of just signing off and never coming back.
But I do want to add, thank you for that. I do want to add, signing off and never coming back, I'm slow, it's funny. If any board members are interested or have like a compelling, feeling towards something or factual knowledge and you want to write a column, we would love that. So don't hesitate, if Jamie has something she really wants to write about, and it's less than 500 words, 200 words is fine, that's just a few paragraphs. Anywhere from 200 to 500, 500 is what they ask. They also said we can include photographs or whatever we want. We can do whatever we want with this, so, support from all of you would be great, in the event you would like to support us. All your free time.
We good?
I'm good.
All right. It's now for what everybody is waiting for. Item C, the 2019-2020 proposed budget discussion. We've had our presentation. Brian presented on the 14th. And then we had all of the departments present to us on the 23rd. You've had your budget books for quite a, couple of weeks now. I did ask that if there were any basic questions to be posed to the superintendent about his budget, please send them to me. And we would get them to Brian. Brian would then in turn respond. I did receive some questions. In fact, what I'll do is I'll actually go through the questions. Brian, you sent the questions to everyone, the answer to
No, I did
everyone, or
not.
just
I sent
to?
it
Okay. So, question number 1 was looking for updated athletic information in order to answer the questions we posed last week, which surrounded the athletic budget with more details relative to coaches and stipends and what the true overall cost was, because there were, in our opinion, some items missing. I believe that we received an item on that today. Although for the life of me, I'm shoving it in there, there it is.
The new updated version?
It's here.
It's right here.
See, Mr. Moore is in the audience, ready to field any questions we have here.
A comment, not a question. I appreciate the work that you did. I really do. It's much clearer. You included the coaching that we asked for, and that perceived inequity that we had talked about with baseball and softball has been rectified. This makes it much more clear to me, how many athletes are in it, the total cost of every sport, the officials, the coaches. You did a nice job. Thank you.
Any questions regarding the new, I know you're just getting a chance to look at it now, the athletics budget with what's in here. I think that we asked quite a few questions the other night, of which you answered, and then turned around and gave us a document that we clarifies a lot of those questions. While you're looking at that, we can go back to this is an open discussion. I just want to go through the questions that were here. Number 2 was administrator salaries under people services claims that the increase is reserved partially for a merit increase. What is the process to determine a merit increase for administration? Administrator salaries under people services claims that the increase is reserved partially for a merit increase. What is the process to determine a merit increase for administration? I think the question here
It's on
is-
page 2.2, if you look.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
It's
2.2. People first, yeah. It just said it was reserved for a merit increase.
I see it.
I'm just curious what the process is for a merit increase.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so
So the merit, the way it was termed was merit was non-affiliated staff, administrators. So there's no, like if you're an administrator, there's a contractual rate of increase based on a contract over 3 years. Everyone is non-affiliated to yearly increase. So there's administrative assistants who are yearly. There's also administrators who are yearly. So those are usually done at the end of the school year. So there are reserve funds put in those accounts, and the merit is really for merit being, typically there's a raise of some sort at that time.
So this is, the dollars that you referenced in here is the anticipated merit increases for those non-affiliated.
Potential increases for non.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Why the increase of 5 FTEs for certified salary? This is pre-K at Willard.
So the pre-K, last year's budget, there was not a pre-K line in your budget document. Those teachers were lumped into special education teachers. Pre-K teachers are special education teachers, so that line wasn't there. We broke it out to be a little more descriptive, let you know that was preschool. So that's why the number is 5. And last year was either 9 or 10 special education teachers at Willard, which included the preschool teachers. Does that make sense? Different way of you know, the line. We made it a little more descriptive.
So did that other line reduce?
Yes. Okay. We'll get special education teachers.
Question number 4 is, other than the IT position, are any of our salary increases due to new positions?
The answer is yes. Let me just tell you exactly what they are. On the response there, Matt, I broke it out based on non-certified, certified.
So you have, for non-certified, there's a part-time secretary position here at central office.
Right.
The recess and lunch paraprofessionals at the elementary schools are in here, and that is because of the mediation process that we went through at Berlin Public Schools.
Right.
Was not successful.
Not successful, so there's about over $120,000 in there for error that I brought back for recess and lunch.
Director of Nutrition.
The Director of Nutrition, Wendy was currently being funded through the cafeteria fund, but those funds deal with some federal dollars that we receive from nutrition. Wendy currently does not have the requirement to be the food service director based on not having a 2-year degree. So right now we petitioned the federal government as well as the state and put a plan in place. So we cannot use those funds to pay Wendy's salary, so we're using non-certified funds, but that decreases the food service fund. So it's a wash, it's just where the money's coming from. We can't have the money coming from the food service program.
So if I understand this, is our current dining director was being paid out of the balance fund for food services as a direct costs to that program.
Yes.
And because that is, the National School Lunch Program requires that all funding come to there go directly back to food service. Because she doesn't have the 2-year degree at this point, we can't pay her salary through that, so we moved it to the direct operation.
Absolutely. Which, so there's a decrease there and an increase here, so it's a balance.
Yes and no, right? It's a cost to the operational budget that we didn't see before.
Right,
We don't
but there's,
subsidize our food
but
service.
there's less funding that, and maybe Jeff can explain, there's less funding that's being spent out of the cafeteria services line, because we're not paying the salary to anybody. So, I'll let you.
You don't even have to explain, trust me, I know how this one works. I'll save you the agony. But I do know, and I would check the resources, but if you have a balanced fund in your cafeteria funding, I'm very sure that you can make an allocation to the cafeteria funding for things like custodial services, electricity, things of that nature that would move things out of the operating budget and go against your food revenues if you have a balanced fund, a positive balanced fund. So that would be something to look into. So let's say that cleanup of the cafeterias at the end of the day by the custodians is 10% of their time. I believe that you can take 10% of your custodial expense and move it against, thereby freeing up dollars on the operational side. So I would look into that, but I think that that's fact. Without getting into when do we expect to hear back? I know that could be an issue, and she does a great job for us, so.
We're waiting to hear back. You know, Jeff drafted a response on our plan. We're hoping that there's not an issue there, and we have some other plans if it doesn't become an issue, that I would share with the board at a later date.
The head custodian at VHS,
We had a head custodian at VHS. We thought about having a facilities director or head custodian. We opted to hire the head custodian at VHS, which meant that we needed to hire. We promoted a custodian. We were short a custodian at VHS, as we had it. The head custodian was out on sick leave for a number of months, so we went short. So we just put that person back in place.
so last year's budget, we had an open custodian positions on campus.
That was filled with overtime, and then, so we did what we had to do to keep the school running and functioning and cleanliness and operational on the weekends and nights and so on, but we were short of custodian.
No new head counts under administration. New certified, we have one counselor at VHS.
Yes. Caseloads at VHS were over 230 students per counselor, which are much too large, and the need was great to have someone working with our students with all the social issues as well as preparation for career college and other.
We used to have 5, correct? And then we got rid of one last year.
So this is a reinstatement of the reduction from last year.
Yeah, we can't do it. We tried, we can't function at the level we need to.
Part-time internship leadership coordinator at VHS.
So we talked
There's a whole lot to say.
We talked at the retreat a little bit about the need for that, to build out the program, to start adding internships for students, and the need for staffing to help with that. So this would be an additional stipend or additional hours. We've budgeted that at $20,000.
Okay, and this is a stipend?
Well, it's additional salary for somebody. It wouldn't be, typically wouldn't expect it to be a full-time position at this point. We would start off with a stipend or an additional salary for the position and hoping to attract someone, and if it adds and we do an internship, become to the degree that this person or this position needs additional funding, we would ask for it as we go. So we build on it.
So you just said it's budgeted at $20,000. So how did we arrive at $20,000 as the number for something that we're implementing or starting? I understand the ramp-up process, but if we're ramping up from 20, do we get to 40, 60, 80?
Well, I think you looked at it saying if a person's devoting on an average, say, 10 to 15 hours a week, 14 hours a week, and it needs to have 50 hours a week or 40 hours a week, then we have to have adequate salary for it. But to go in and ask to say, with a tight budget, we're gonna go forward and look to say, we're gonna ask for a whole, a position for someone and get a certified staff member at 60-some odd thousand. I don't think that the budget's gonna sustain it. So we'd like to have a piece of it to get moving and then build upon it.
No, I was just gonna ask, are you expecting that this is someone that, a current employee, something that a current employee could take on in addition to their
Yes,
role?
that is the intent.
And how many hours? 10 to 15 per annum is what the plan is to
Yes,
start.
When we get the program moving, we start to get some connection with businesses, get some students out, and then move from there. Realizing it's a starting point.
Have we looked at what other districts pay for that position?
Depends on the district, depends how large the internship program is. If there's that many students out, they can afford a whole staff member for that.
Do we do internships at all right now?
We used to have a work study program years ago where our students got actually their senior year, but they worked, they didn't have to attend classes. We haven't done that in over 9 years, so. And it really wasn't, it was run through the counseling department, it wasn't managed with the integrity that I was.
Is it is it for seniors or how does it work? Is it for any child or any student who would like an intern, to do an
Well,
intern?
I don't think we have, all that
That would be
much.
part of the
Planning,
process.
right, someone that's gonna
figure it
make it their job to figure it out, to look at what other districts are doing, to kind of start the balls in motion.
We can't fully develop the program if we don't know if we will have any staff to supervise them. So for example, we have internships, kids wanting to go out and do internships. We currently do not have a strong process for screening people in terms of a protocol for like background check of someone who's a potential host for an intern. We just like one piece of it, the credit requirements, the finding people to do it.
So it wouldn't even be something that would probably be up and running right from the get-go as far as students going out to do internships, because you'd have to do all the background information and set it up
If we
first.
do things like we have funding in the spring, I think we can move quickly to get some things.
I think if we start July 1, it'd be difficult to get up till probably second semester to
Right.
get something going. But you need to have a points person involved in it, and I know that I think it's totally supportive of it,
That's a great idea.
came from multiple discussions, so it's a start, it's not, definitely not what we need to launch on.
Well, as I think that we're all in agreement that we believe in an internship program at the high school, we have to acknowledge the fact that the college path may not be the path for every student, and that's okay. And if we can help those students that want to follow another path in some kind of program, that makes sense. So we know that it's been critical of that in the past as well. So there's a large jump in the certified stipend positions at the high school.
So there's a 2% jump in all stipends contractually. The other, if you look back at last year's budget, special education summer school funding is not listed. And so the funding for special education, it's not that we're paying teachers a stipend for summer education like they're signing a contract. So that's where the additional funding was put.
So you're saying that in last year's budget that we adopted, we did not have summer school built into that?
Summer
We had
school is not,
that expense
there was a line in there for special education, but it was not in there. We since deleted that line because it wasn't funded in a clear way, and because it's stipend, it was put here with where the majority of the stipends are.
So you're saying there's an offset someplace else?
Yes.
Okay. The next question revolves around equipment for the elementary schools. Griswold is getting, has a $400 equipment request, and the other elementaries are getting 3,000 each. Why the discrepancy or disparity?
So it's the first time we've had equipment listed out this way in the budget. And so looking at the budget, we made some decisions to look at what the requests were and proportionally reduce them. Griswold just requested less in that line for equipment. So when we reduced it proportionally, Griswold ended up with less. So it wasn't intentionally that we took Griswold down to a certain number. Griswold just requested less on the line initially. And so we made some decisions to reduce the equipment budget.
I see you make a comment that once the budget is finalized, that there may be a redistribution.
Absolutely, because whatever reductions you make at this point with your recommendations on the budget, you move the board forward and beyond that, then when there are reductions, we actually will meet with the administrator to know where the reductions are and then let them have some autonomy in what's the best way to use the money and use the priority.
And then the last item in here is comment more than question. And I think that all of us have this same concern, and it revolves around security and IT, right? So we had this conversation that security and IT right now sit in Department 61 or Account 61, or is it department or account? Account 61. And traditionally, Account 61, our requests that roll through there typically are not funded at the levels that need be. But right now, we've isolated those two departments in Department 61. My fear, or Account 61, thank you, Gary. My fear is that that's all great. I mean, I think we have $1 million number in IT and another large number in the security piece. And when it goes to the Board of Finance and then the Town Council, they say, yep, it's nice you asked for $2 million, we're giving you 50,000. And those big ticket items of IT and security, which are both important to our curriculum and the safety of our children, now have been kind of wiped out of the budget, and there's no contingency on the operational side that would absorb any of that. I understand we're already at 5.96, and to move that back over to the operational budget is adding, $2.5 million, something like that, to what we already have in there. And there's a huge fear of, without being disrespectful, but perhaps a lynching of Mr. Panigi, not by the Board of Education, but by the powers that be. But I'm really concerned about having it isolated. I think it's the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to isolate those two departments. Here's what it costs to run it, here's what it costs to maintain, and this is what we need to do. Here's our security, this is what we want, and this is what we need for the safety of our students and our staff. But because of where they're falling in the budget process, there's a huge risk to us. So again, more of a statement than a question, but I would love to hear other board members kind of chime in, and also Brian, your concern, you expressed your concern, which is that in essence you agree the concern of the proposed budget now pushed well over 7%, and that's a scary thought too. So. Nothing, crickets.
I have a question actually, with the new packet that we just got, and it's broken down differently, it's separated out. So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. So like the page 5.1 that says information technology, and it has $963,000. Those items, correct me if I'm wrong, are not found anywhere else in the operational budget. This is a separate entity.
The only other thing you find in the budget is Chromebooks.
There were some, I noticed that. That's not the same, not referring to the same batch though. Okay.
But what's happened is the items that would have been in the operational budget in the past, Craig Szymanski, our IT director, has pulled them out and put them in his budget here.
But his budget's not actually part of the operational budget.
It's not.
Right. pursued any grant opportunities for security cameras? I know that the state was offering some.
Yes. We still have, we're on phase 4 of the grant.
Yeah.
Phase 3 was approved, that approved 3 of the schools. We're looking to the other schools to hopefully be approved in phase 4, which will give us 42% reimbursement, I believe, whatever we purchase for cameras. So $1,000 camera, $120 for state reimbursement.
So is that kind of, is that last page that we're looking at? Is that most of that information we would,
Yes.
we would hope that we'd be reimbursed at 42%?
Yes. I think it's 42, Rich.
Okay.
It's in the 40s. That does change. But provided that they're in agreement that it is secure, the cameras obviously are.
Right.
The telephone system was an issue with not being secure, certain things are eligible, certain things are not. In town, in fairness, the town's been great. We did purchase the phone system from McGee last year. At the end of the year, the system went down. It was over $8,000 to fix it. It was an antiquated system. It was going to be replaced for 3 years. We decided to fix the phone system and spend $30-some odd thousand. It was board funds, not town funds, or capital equipment that we spent. Notified the town manager. The town has now found us funds to do the elementary schools this year.
Okay.
So those phone systems will be replaced this year. Now, it may happen this summer, but they're scheduled to be done.
So are they out of this document?
You remember last time, if you look back, they were priority number 1 and everything.
That's what I was
We
asking.
now have a commitment to have them be
Okay.
good.
Okay.
With 18-19 money.
So as
Existing money.
it relates to security and equipment associated with security, as I recall, there was money budgeted for the vestibules previously, and also cameras. Where was that in our budget in previous years? And because I think it's been cut or moved or no, I don't know.
The vestibules were never in our operating budget. The vestibules were in this capital budget over here, supported in part by the state government, passed through federal funds, and in part by the town with a match. So those vestibules are already funded. They're not completed yet, they're not constructed yet, but they are 100%
The money
funded.
is.
Yes.
Got
The
it.
same way in which our phones are being done now.
Okay.
Okay, it's a matching grant. And see what happens is we apply for things, but the town has to come up with a match. The way they come up with the match, the way they come up with the match is through this account. So depending on how their
So it's
whole plan of expenditures go, as you go through the year, they have more and more funds they either have spent or haven't spent, and then they put up the match.
So it was in account 61 previously for the vestibules?
Yeah.
That was not in our budget. And what about the cameras that had previously?
Cameras, there's been cameras requested. They haven't been put in yet. There is some jockeying around with the grants that we have right now on what had to be done first. It was decided upon that because the way they thought the funding was coming forward, that the phones were the first thing that should be done. And not everybody that's involved in technical items in the schools agrees with that. And now next will be the cameras. We did find out something very good, is that the things that were initially applied for under the last round 3 and round 4 were categorized back. This is a couple of years ago, were categorized back. We've got the ability through the state government to recategorize those for cameras. So we're, again, as I tried to say last meeting, we're putting things in this account, or at least in front of the town, no matter what account they go in, to let them know we need them. I believe what will happen is as this process goes forward with the budget and the town, you will start to see some cohesiveness of what the town's gonna put up, what we're gonna put up, what we're gonna get and move forward for these items. Okay? It's really just, in my mind, putting our requests in front of the town.
By putting it in the account 61?
I'm sorry, yes? Well, only because, again, this is a strategy which was just talked about by, not only the superintendent, but the president. I mean, you could take this technology budget, and the board could take the technology budget and say they want it in the operating budget. I mean, you could do that. So you could do the same thing with security. Again, it's simply a matter of where it's gonna be funded out of. It seems to me that, it's the prerogative of the board. The superintendent has suggested that it's offered in this manner. It doesn't mean the board couldn't suggest they want it in some other manner, as far as I'm concerned.
So I've had a chance to chat with Craig Szymanski a little bit and take a look at some of the details on this. From a technology perspective, I think the 39,000 internet-related things we need. Those are monthly bills that we have to pay for internet services. In my opinion, those should be operating items rather than capital items. That's not something that we can afford. And then the software services items totaling 91 through 58 include various pieces of software, backup software, Schoology, PowerSchool. Again, all things that we need. We want new servers and hardware, but whether or not we get a new server, we still need to back it up and protect the data that's stored on that server. So the backup software becomes an operating expense. I mean, as do all the other systems, the LMS, Schoology, PowerSchool, et cetera. Those, I think, should move over to the operating rather than the account 61. That's my 2 cents.
So Tim, first off, I thank you for checking with you on that, and I would agree that the internet at 39,000 and then the software services at 91,000 should be in our operating budget, not in this essentially equipment and capital piece, simply because to your point, regardless of the age or condition of the equipment, because we have to pay for those things in order to operate our systems. We might want new ones, but we have to have these things in order to keep things moving forward. Regarding the numbers that are in here, Brian, I don't know if you can speak to this, but for example, Chromebooks, $235,862. Is that replacing everything we have that we need to replace, or is it a 3-year plan and this is what you need to do this year? Do you understand what I'm asking? Is this the whole, everything that's stacked up in a room someplace that's not where we're going to work tomorrow? Or is it?
There's, for an example, last year, just to give you a little idea, order of magnitude of what happens on an annual basis, here what we try to do every year, make sure we have Chromebooks constantly coming and turning over. Last year, at the end of the year, we spent $127,000 on Chromebooks. That was not what we spent for the entire year. Okay. So this number, in working with Craig, is what he believes should be in our budget for
So
this year.
that's the estimate that he's giving us to update those that are
Yes.
out of date or.
Specifically out of date. Again, I'm looking at the list from him.
Yeah.
There is a number of Samsung Chromebooks that are end of life July 2018. That's
So
not
they're
a
gonna come
typo.
out at the end of,
2018.
so they're a year old.
And a number of Acer Chromebooks. Number of Acer Chromebooks end of life June of 2019.
What do we do with the old
End
Chromebooks?
of life June of 2018, that means that we're, right, so we're going over a year. All right, you said 5 years.
Borrowed time.
So what do we do with the old Chromebooks when they give them back?
So we do some as loaners if they're in good enough shape. The ones that aren't, we discarded them. I'm not sure exactly at that point what the value is of that, because a lot of them end of life where they won't even.
They're similar to an iPhone, where they're dependent on a certain version of software that Google is pushing, and it just won't run properly.
And we're just coming up on the
first
mass
one, right.
of Chromebooks. So to say, we offer them off the, at an auction site or something like we do with other items. Students wanted to purchase them, but they're really not of value if they can't even get onto the internet, because it's the operating system, whatever they have is, I don't know the operating system, but you know better too. Because it is operating, I guess I'm right. But it did look good. It's not, like we had iPads that no longer could be supported, so they're not abused, right,
Right, but, I know my old school, when that would happen with teacher computers and Chromebook, they would then sell them for a very low price, and then
We do
people
the same.
can do whatever they want with them.
We take a picture usually and it goes up for bid on any item. We have a whole process that we use.
Could we sell them to members, like the families and the members of the community? Or would that be
We
too
used to have a
complex?
townwide tag sale, I guess they could go to that if they'd like it. If they're usable, then we would put them as loaners.
Right,
And if they're not, you know, this time we might have a mass one, so I'm not quite sure what we just want to talk about it. But any item, and Jeff, you can share more about the process. There's a process where you take a picture and someone's able to bid on it or purchase it at a real reduced price.
The town is involved with the same process that, the Board of Ed is involved with the same process by our policies that the town has on if in fact there are any level of equipment that is not needed anymore by the Board of Ed and or any of the facilities in the schools. There's a process we go through where we identify it, we offer it out, it goes to the purchasing department of town, and they put it in an auction. That's something we do ourselves.
okay,
So it's
I was just curious.
you can go out on a government site, other governments can look at it, you know, it's a constant. But what I understand now, even from the last few years on the board, yeah, you think you spend a lot of money on these Chromebooks and you're gonna have them forever, and that's just not what this is about. You know, if you're gonna have, you know, between people at McGee and people at the high school, they need Chromebooks every couple of years. Okay, you can think about 1,000 kids, let's say, for conversation's sake, which between McGee and Berlin High School is nothing, and you spend, you know, $400 on a Chromebook, it's $400,000. So,
With regard to security, I see for staffing, there's actually 6 folks listed here. I know we've had conversations about 5, and I see there's a 6th added here, and I'm not questioning the need, I'm just asking the question.
So we talked about upstairs, about the 6th. The mayor spoke of only having 3 because of SROs. I requested 6. The high school, speaking to Eileen, who had experience at Cotter High School in West Hartford, they had 4 plus an SRO, a little bit of a student body. She's really advocating for 2 at the high school, and maybe one would be the director at the high school. There's some more space, and then putting someone that number if we were able to get 6. Otherwise, we look for a different configuration. So that's the reason for 6. And we really would want that person to do residency and the security director to maybe take on some more roles with registration and residency. We're able to get the 6 person.
And then the cameras, I see those are your cameras with the installation. I'm assuming that this adds to 124 because that's in parentheses. But this is a wish list, or someone's gone through and identified all the locations and that's what we need to have? Or, so you got 61 in here, that's actually down from the last time we talked, so that was a good thing.
So I think we requested 65, so I don't know if there's...
Okay. Are these cameras, do they fall in line with what Carrie was asking about earlier? Are these, some of these the same cameras that Carrie was asking about, or are these in addition to what we have in our other?
these are the cameras that we need to move forward for this security program. If in fact those cameras get funded or matched by the town with this money or other money, we get them all through the grants if the grants come through. If not, we want to be on board getting them in a capital plan.
Okay.
So I know that doesn't sound clear, but
So
back to
these
your
cameras
comment
are in the grant,
Yep,
but we're also capturing them
well,
here.
because it's a match and because we don't know whether we're going to get the grant.
Understood.
So, you know, the grants still have to get approved, like, well, the last one we did is our big one for cameras, and that application hasn't come back for approval yet, so what we want to do is make sure we have it as a request.
No, I wasn't. Nope.
Okay, quick, just a clarification question. The equipment, $1,000 per guard for $6,000 under hardware, what is that?
Well, we assume that guards, if they're gonna come in and do a guard, they're gonna have equipment, whether they're gonna have uniforms, whether they're gonna have any kind of tools, whether they're gonna have anything at all that gets approved by what a guard ought to be carrying.
So let me ask the big elephant in the room, is this $1,000 also the weapon that they may need to carry?
Yes. And that's a discussion that should take place at some point.
Again, this is a budget, so you don't wanna not consider things.
Just asking that particular question, I know that the mayor and Parks and Council are advocating very strongly that our security guards be armed. So I wanted to know if that was inclusive of that.
Well, remember, and that's, could be one of the reasons to consider to leave it in this account rather than operating. If it's an operating, it might be a different discussion, but again, it's all gonna unfold. I wanna mention one thing, on the information technology budget. You may notice that, back, whatever it was, a week ago or two, we had some minor staff in there.
Yes, I was gonna ask about that.
We've taken that out because we thought that was, if it was necessary, in talking with the superintendent, that would be something that would be in the operating budget. It is not, but it would be more appropriately there than somewhere else.
Okay, so it's been removed from this
Exactly.
line item,
Yep.
but it has not been added to your
No, it is not that.
Nope. Nope.
There's a recommendation to Craig that we could use another IT person, which I don't disagree with. But again, looking at the budget where it's at, put that into the request. I just didn't feel that we could do that to go above. So as we go back to the earlier question, what are the new positions? What do we rather do?
Okay.
As we're talking technology, can I ask a question, Mike? I don't know if it's actually for Jeff or for Tim, because you said you talked to Craig. The line about wireless district, which is $254,000, is that to fund our existing Wi-Fi technology or for new technology?
I'm gonna hopefully defer to.
One of us, you can start off.
Yep, those are for Wi-Fi access points that need replaced. They're outdated.
Okay, so it's actual equipment.
Lot of
I got you,
A lot of
okay.
it's outdated. The access points that we have throughout the buildings,
Yeah.
they're outdated.
Okay.
Just generally, I spent a lot of time speaking to Craig from a not only budget standpoint, but just generally, so I could understand it, okay? Tim totally understands the technology better than I do, but he said, Jeff, it's nice that everybody's speaking about security and cameras and all the connections we need and so on and so forth, but if we don't have the capacity to maintain it and operate it, it's not gonna work, and we don't have that capacity. So that's.
So it's, again, I understand the sticker shock of not putting this into the operational budget, but this scares the heck out of me to have this hanging there, not knowing. You know, we get the cameras for security reasons, but then we don't fund the Wi-Fi for $250,000 that needs to get funded, and then things don't work properly.
And the next question, I think, if you think about it, you would ask, because we have had IT over the last few years and some investments in IT. And the way we've done that without having it huge in our operating budget is to wait to see if we have any surplus after the end of the year, and so we fund it. So it's not like we've never had any IT. It's just that we don't budget for it because it's very expensive to
Take
put
it
in the
out of the
operating
budget to get to a number.
But, you know, Rich, having it here is documented the need.
Yep.
So for instance, you know, to even go with these cameras at some of the elementary schools, we had to update the fiber because the fiber wasn't adequate. And we did that last year in preparation for the next steps with the wireless access points, the new ones, and the cameras. So they're having it documented, whether we get it in phases or in pieces, it's still here, the town's aware of it. You know, in conversations, we had 3 meetings with the mayor and town manager. They are committed to security and safety. The mayor has said that publicly. And the cameras, having the cameras where they're able to be accessed at remote locations, which that's not the case currently, and also to be able to be accessed not on a daily basis, but if need to, that the police station can plug right into all of the cameras. So, you know, I'm not saying we're gonna get it all funded.
No, but you're kind of saying they're obligating themselves, at least publicly, to funding some of this stuff.
Yes, and they use the grants and also to try to support the grant funding. So I think, you know, I'm more optimistic on the security than in the past where it's been equipment that we're asking for or building the site, especially with the security piece being pulled out of the equipment as security equipment. You know, I'm not gonna say it won't be phases like we've done with the phone and you know, with other things, but I think having it here sends a message, having a plan for it.
So I think, when we're talking about these things, right, so we have a need, and we have a need that takes us from here to here. And somebody used this analogy is, we're not gonna go from here to here in 1 year. But we do need to see it going up towards the end result, right? I think that doing it this way puts a big spotlight on this is the need, this is why we need it, and here's what the cost is today. Each time we delay it, the cost may go up. But here's what we need to do is we need to go from here to here in order to maintain the curriculum and to provide all the support that the staff needs to educate our students. The expectation that they're gonna say, yeah, we're gonna give you 311,000 in capital equipment, we're gonna give you, I don't even know what this totals up, 503,000 in site and building, and then we're gonna give you another 963,000 in IT, and then another 575,000 for security all this year. While that's what I would like, I'm not sure we're gonna get there, but I think that we have to put a spotlight on what those things are, and I think that this does this. But I agree with Rich, is it scares the heck out of me that it's not anywhere else. Because then, all we're doing is this, so that by the end of the year, if they manage the budget well, and the ball bounces the right way, then they can fund some of those things at the end of the year. And that's but that's the way, unfortunately, the way the district has done it for year after year after year after year. And now keep in mind that for year after year after year, we're getting budget increases of 1.3%, 1.2%, 1.4%, 1.5%, when just contractual obligations are running up over 2+. You know, the reality of this budget that we have in front of us is Brian submitted 5.96. As uncomfortable as he is with presenting that budget, he's done it because in all of the previous 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 years, we've taken down all those places where we could pull things out of the budget, and now it's just not there. You know, we talked about, we funded 8 salaries, I believe, it was 8 out of one of the grants. And now that grant has shrunk down enough that we
Provide back into the operation.
right, so we had to move five salaries back into the operational budget because the grants are no longer at the levels they were. And it also means that we weren't using the grants to move district projects forward for what ideally they were set up for, so.
Matt, I'm sorry, can we go back to security for just a second?
Absolutely.
About these guards, because it's extremely upsetting to me that we're talking about these guards and giving them $1,000 to potentially arm them, and we haven't had this discussion yet. So when are we gonna have that discussion? Because it seems to be very important to town council or whoever about arming these individuals.
We have had the conversation
But we haven't
about.
made a decision as to where we're going to go with it.
Correct.
When are we going to do that? Because I feel like.
Well,
And this 1,000 per guard is not a call out for weapon.
no,
This is-
I just was asking the question.
Understood.
Yeah.
I'm
That's
just
what
being
I
clear
want.
that this is not,
Bulletproof
earmarked
vests.
for
I mean,
weapon.
what are we talking about?
depends on.
We put it in because the nature of it is a.
Whatever it might be.
But we've been talking about whether or not it's going to be an armed position or it's not. That is, to me, as a board member, extremely important when we're talking about safety component of our budget and how many guards we have, is that part of what we're trying to go towards? Is this armed rationale of having, that's why we're, you see what I'm saying? I'm trying to figure out where we're going.
I understand what you're saying, but I almost think that that's the part that it avoids a bit because we don't even know if we're gonna have people, never mind the.
My understanding is that this is extremely important to town council.
Yes, it is extremely important to town council, and there have been parameters in discussions with the mayor of what, he's willing to fund, how he's willing to fund it, under what conditions.
Exactly. So that's.
But with that being said, this is the budget though.
Yes, you're right.
So putting it forward with the budget, we haven't received the funding yet. So to not put that in there, right, because we haven't made a decision. And then if it does go through a do vote, then it's not in the budget. So my feeling was, put it under equipment, which could be a multitude of things, right? And then if it does go forward, we decide that we will have, them be armed, then great. If there's some funding there, if we decide to not, then the town will reduce that. The mayor has been very deliberate in his opinion of if he's going to support the funding, his expectations.
So when we have our discussion with our town people, that will probably come up in discussion.
I think that before moving forward, Jamie, I think you're right. We need to have the larger discussion here. So the board makes a decision, regardless of what the mayor would like, and what his position on it. The board has to be comfortable with moving forward either way.
I just want to make sure. Does it look?
Questions for any of the administrators or Brian?
I got one on here that we haven't talked about at all. And I think this came up earlier about Willard. The renovations of the lower level 2 classrooms in an office. I remember having this conversation, but I honestly don't remember what it was about. And it's $110,000. So what happens, is this a necessity for next year? What if this money's not there? I don't remember what the program is that needed the renovations.
Matt, I'm gonna ask Matt to speak on that.
So what had happened is last year's budget meeting, it was determined that prior to the last decision, we were gonna move, that was the one item that the board was gonna move forward with. We held off at the last minute so they can do the study of the 3 elementary schools. Be that the elementary schools are going to stay the same now and we're not going to close or reconfigure and whatnot for any time in the future. We had talked about the need of renovating. Right now at Willard, we have 2 floors. The downstairs consists of our 5th grade, our OTPT, assistive technology, all in one office. We have some space downstairs across from those classrooms that we have put in to get renovated. The need for that was at Willard, we have, we're the school with a preschool and we have our extensive glass program. Right now we're at 20-something students and those students are each one-to-one with paraprofessional support. The size of classrooms we have right now just can't sustain those kinds of the needs that we have. In addition, we were looking at in terms of students really having space to grow, students having the space to really function the way they need to be. We were also thinking of it in terms of privacy as well. We have a lot of people in one room, and I think it is hard for students to make that, students to have that time to grow without 20 other children, or 12 right now in each room there. Our numbers at Willard have pretty much stayed the same, which is a reason why you'd say, why are we renovating then? But I think our special education services and our needs, speech and language services, everything seems to be growing. So that is why I put it back in the budget for this year, because Linda and I were already talking, and we're already out of space for next year already. We're talking about where we can put people, and we're coming back to the discussion of having special ed teachers share a room. Well, for a couple reasons, that's not okay. The confidentiality piece. 2 special ed teachers, each running a small group. It's very difficult in a half-size classroom. So that's really where it came back on the table now, since we're not reconfiguring the elementary schools or whatnot. And Linda, I don't know if you want to add on to it, but I would say there's definitely a need at Willard for that. If not, Linda and I have talked about, and not in any great detail, but, you know, the need that in a year or two, we're not sure if Willard could sustain exactly what we have right now, if the program is growing, or if our preschool ever grows or whatnot. We're very tight on space, so.
Did we approve that we had the discussion last year though. So was it approved in last year's
Well,
budget?
there's only X amount of dollars, I don't know the number that was approved last year. There's only X amount of dollars, I just was sharing with Matt, that when we look at what the number is, we look at the totality of all the schools and what's a priority first to do. So I can tell you right now that McGee, you can speak to if you like, Sal, the old FCS room, you want to speak to why that room has to be done, and Linda, you can speak to that also. That's like,
Yeah.
so go ahead, one of you if you'd like.
It's very similar to what Matt just said, right? Do you want to take it, Linda?
We have a handful of our students in our blast program with significant needs in the middle school next year. And there's no space there right now for them to function. We have kids going up in wheelchairs, they're gonna need a bathroom in their classroom to work on hygiene skills, toileting skills.
Where's that right now? What is it called, the FC?
Well, it's the old family and consumer science, so it's the old home ec rooms.
What floor is it on?
It's on the first floor. We flipped one, they're across from the band rooms.
Oh,
We flipped one when we cut the family and consumer science program into a keyboarding lab for piano and keyboards. And the other one right now, it just sits with the kitchens and the sewing machines and so we need to
So it's not
renovate
being
that.
utilized at all right now.
Right now it's being used as, there's some storage in there, but there's also a couple of students who go in and use the kitchen under supervision with their special education teacher or otherwise.
So you look at the priorities, as you see, based on the building, you look at the number that we received, and then we reprioritize as a district what needs to be done.
So Julie, I think to your point is, yes, last year, this was on the list to renovate there, and it's $110,000, and that money went through. But then when we put a hold on it because of the study, that $110,000 got reallocated just elsewhere in the district. So it's not sitting in account anywhere.
It
Remember, we don't
was
have any of those, we're not allowed to have any of those.
Yes, no, I do understand that.
It got moved and other things were done. Yes, sir.
Could I take 5 minutes of your meeting and use this exhibit to give some illustration of the things that you've been talking about and the importance of this 10-year plan?
Is everybody okay with that? Okay. Absolutely, John.
If you do that, hand your copy to Julia and Tracy. And I'll give a copy to these two.
I took
Adam, did you?
I can look on here.
All right.
Sure, I'm
Tracy,
So let me,
I got nobody.
let me just say what I think is,
shower this
the good part of all of this is we need to figure out where things belong. But let's see where some things are. So if you separate the 2-page from the 6-page legal side, you go to the 4th page of the legal exhibit.
The
4th page.
They're not numbered, but you'll see that at the bottom half of the 4th page, it says school, 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 school.
That's this one.
And it continues on to the 5th page. And let me, if you got to the 4th page, have you flip over to the 5th page. You look
Fifth
under
page
the
has
column.
green on the bottom.
Excuse me?
Fifth page has green on the bottom.
Green on the bottom. And then look under fiscal year 18. We're looking down the live column, which is that year is this year, 18-19. Okay? Look at the items here where the yellow is, and you're going to see that the titles of those are security cameras, various schools, and 2 more down, the last one, security vestibules. So Carrie, the answer to your question, where's the money? That's in this year's budget. That's a live number, and that's not in contrast to what Jeff had said. But the point is, that's where you'd see it. So you'd say, okay, good, I like that. The next column over and the rest of them are all forecasts. So I want you to flip back to the fourth page, go ahead.
Just as a point of clarification, what is the purpose of the yellow versus red?
I don't know that, and this is not a well-rehearsed
You made that up then, I just asked the same question.
What I'm saying is, the questions that you have for this, and I'm gonna show you something else you're not gonna like in just a minute. But the point is, these exhibits should tie together better than they do. But if you look in the middle of the schools on the fourth page, there's a yellow highlighted area. Now, that, if you drag it across, says annual capital maintenance. I think that's what your guys are trying to put in there. You've got a number, and we've talked about last time, I said it wasn't 50,000. And it might not have been anything. If we look at the things that are in there, and I'll show you that in just a moment, but that highlighted thing doesn't start, you don't get to have one until fiscal year 2021. You don't get one in the 10-year plan. And the number, the 10-year plan, when you talk about, in the old days, it used to be with copiers, but you've got vans, you've got other things. That number should be like 450 to 500,000. But at least there's something, so that's a point to look at. Is that your number, aside from what you were just talking about, which is IT and security? But the rest of the things, if you look at the titles, are sexy things like Willard's roof. You know, that got done, and it's not something that you guys necessarily put in your capital, but you want it done, so that's in there. There's a line in here for vehicles, and it would divide your 23 vehicles across 12 years as if it were going to be funded properly to replace them at some kind of life for those cars. 200,000 miles, 8 years on the road, something. There must be some assumptions that are there. But let me take you this way now. I'm going to go back to the one that Matt said had the green on page 5. And I want to go down to the bottom of the fiscal year 19, and the number that's there. The fiscal year 18. This is the document that was produced for this year's budget. So let's go down fiscal year 18 to the bottom of the blue section.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's 5.
Oh, we have 1 minute and 58 seconds left.
Oh, all right.
I started my timer.
5.416 million is what was the forecast. This 2-page sheet is the town, and at the bottom of its fiscal year 18, it comes to 4.760. That bothers me. You're gonna say,
So
I'm
we
gonna
forecast
lift them out and put them over here, but believe I did it for just a moment, because I think they updated this, but not this. If you
Wait,
took
where
what
did
you
this
want-
come from? The Board of Finance?
This is, no,
this
the
Okay.
town finance director
Okay.
and his 10-year capital committee,
Okay.
okay? Which you guys need to plug into. There's a guy, there might need to be a board rep, we've got a board of finance rep. You lift the fiscal year 18 out and you throw it over on the 2-page exhibit, and then look at these 2 yellow columns. Retain and exclude. By the time you get done, we funded about $1.6 million and $3 million, depending on whether you throw in these adjustments and so forth. But looking on page 2, here's the school section again, school. On there, about the 6th one down is Willard renovation site and building. I'm coming across. Oh, look, there's the 110,000 they were talking about. Oh, crap. It's in the exclude column. So, for as much as you say these were items that you would have liked to have had done for the buildings, whether it's coming from your budget or not, there was a decision made on which are keepers and which are toss-aways. And the whole point is, if you need 5.4, 4.7, you need more than $1.6 million for the town. And in particular, if you're looking at what you had down at the bottom, I've got a total there, schools, $1.437 million, and up above in the retained column is $424,000. Okay? So again,
that's this year.
That was the budget coming into this year. And these retains, if the numbers are correct, should be the projects that somebody picked, be it Board of Finance or Council, to say, here's what the schools get. And you might say, wait a minute, I'd rather have the 100. All of this is for discussion. All I'm trying to say is, I think this document is something that needs to be gotten by the Board of Ed, find the latest and greatest, and then see if we can do the same thing. The retain and exclude, that won't start till March. Okay? But at least we gotta say two things. One is, what's the number for this year, and what's it based upon? Because this particular document is without IT, and it's without security. And again, this may not be the place to stick it, but somebody better define the rules of what goes in here and what goes in the operating budget. And you're making some choices, that's fine, but the point is, where do they live? And if someone's gonna be the gatekeeper for the capital list, if you're saying that security goes in here, or maybe IT is easier to talk about. If there's equipment and it's gonna have a life that's more than 5 years, then it goes in, oh, then that falls back up. And I need to have, this is a discussion that could be had to the capital committee and to see where the things are best placed. But the point is, if you look at the rest of the 6-page document, you're not as interested in that because that's the town stuff. But the town has to be interested in that. And the town has to be interested in the total number, and it goes back to what you did with your hands earlier, Matt, which is my thing. I'm here, I'm like nowhere, and I gotta get somewhere, and I gotta start moving.
Yeah, it needs
So
to be
as we
moving
start
in the right direction.
As we start to move, what's gonna get funded as a priority out of the things we know are already a priority. So I just wanted to point out that some of the things that you talked about are alive and well. Some of them are alive but excluded, but at least you can start to see what's.
If I look at this
And that's what we requested.
2-page document that you supplied us with,
That's what they're saying yes to.
So we
in
did say
this
yes
year,
to $1 million.
the schools will or are funded $424,211. Is that what that says? But our ask was 1.4.
Yeah, and you can see.
So they cut our ask $1 million.
$1,000,013, which is in the reduction statement. Yeah, but again, it's not necessarily the Board of Ed's 61 portion that you're asking for. You're asking for a piece, that might only be that yellow line. But you want things done for your buildings, you're gonna want the roofs replaced on a systematic basis. So understanding the big picture and who's holding those bags, if you will,
Right.
that's important. And I'm proposing it, that the handout was to the ERC, because I think that's where it's the right place to start. But since you were talking about capital, and we're talking about what things belong where, I think it's a general discussion, and I appreciate the time to share.
And I'm gonna recommend that the ERC get together and have this conversation. So, yes, sir.
Looking at the 2-page document, the column that starts with the numbers references fiscal year 19. Is this already a forecast that they have put together for next year? Then, rather than a look at this year?
That's this year. That's this year.
Right now, we're in 19.
Are we in fiscal 18 or 19?
We're in 19. 19. July 1st starts 19 and 20, so we're ending 19.
The one that I'm trying to pull across is 18 here, but the point would be you need a column that makes sense for the year that you're in, and then the next one that you're gonna forecast. So arguably, you'd want the actual for the year that you did, because some of those things are gonna gravitate. If you didn't do 3 vehicles, you only did 1, and 2 must have been pushed on. It doesn't change the
It doesn't change the need, it's just when it gets funded.
I just want to see what, Jeff, can you validate that? For the year that started July 1, 2018, and ends June 30th, 2019, is that considered fiscal year 18 or fiscal year 19?
I can't for this.
That's 19.
That's a question. 19.
I can't for
The one that.
The one that ends is what we refer to?
But the point is, it can be confirmed. It's a fair question. What I'm saying is, more importantly, we should have 2 exhibits that list all the stuff that's needed over the next, and this arguably, I think, has 11 years, because the 10-year plan is almost a 12-year, because they stretch it out that way first before they don't fund it. But the point would be, we need to follow it to say, here's the year that we're looking at that should be funded this coming year, and what's going to happen to it in the keep or exclude.
What my impression is, and John, from the Board of Finance standpoint, certainly correct me if I'm wrong, our request at our budget time, which is now, it obviously goes to people to review. And one of the people that will be reviewing it He is our director of finance at the town level, along with a lot of other people. And what usually happens is that they come back and say, I remember from the former years, they come back and say, we don't want to do this, but we will fund this in 61, but we'd rather not fund this, we'd rather put it in our capital plan. All this stuff, this conversation goes on where they would like to place things or not, after you request. Which is why our budget is always, what's our request?
Right.
Which is what we're doing. It doesn't mean that it will not end up, we haven't requested a lot of the stuff we've done now. You don't see any IT in there, you don't see any security in there. Well, once this thing hits their request, they're gonna have to consider it. And they're gonna have to consider whether they're putting it in there, whether they're putting it in 61, whether they're gonna say to us, you ought to have it in your operating budget, whatever goes on, but it's a function of, here's what we need, how are we gonna do this together? We're putting our budget on the plate like you want us to do, the board's supporting it, and now who's gonna pay for it? And that's when things start happening like, well, we're gonna add it to our capital plan over the next couple of years, or we're gonna do it in 61 and do it right now, or we're not gonna do it at all. But I don't think you get there without doing what we're already doing.
I'm gonna say it a little differently. I think where you wanna get needs to get in here. And it's a question of whether the budget forecast does it or the capital planning meetings do. And I think it's a capital planning meeting because they're meeting every month of every year.
They do, but remember, from our standpoint here, is in order for us to go and negotiate up there in the capital plan, this group has to approve it. So here we go.
That's fine.
These documents are great. To your point, I'm gonna ask that we have an ERC meeting to discuss specifically this. Adam's not here, so I'll talk to him after this.
Adam's all for it.
Are there any other questions, concerns, or things you want to discuss regarding the budget? We asked Brian to put forth a need-based budget, not a want or a wish-based budget, a need-based budget. What he's telling us is, this is what he needs to maintain the operation of our school district. My question I pose to the board at this point in time is, are there more questions that you'd like to ask Brian about the documents that both he and the administrators and department heads have put forward? Is there any reason to belabor this discussion any longer regarding this at this point in time? Okay, and with that said, I want to thank each and every administrator and support staff that is here tonight to be here for us. I know you put in long days and hours already. I thank you for that. I know that we have one more agenda item on here, but thank you. Don't feel you need to stay. You can certainly scoot up. But Brian's going to make
Just one comment to the board. Please know, even with the 5.96, that you have the original list with the green lines that I handed out last meeting in my presentation, that the administrators here, other than the high school, the counselor, and possibly the intern, job coach, there's no new positions or new requests being funded. There's no new supplies or equipment within their buildings that are being added. They are totally at a flat, if not reduced budget at the buildings. So we're strictly trying to hold on to what we have and to maintain the quality in terms of the courses and programming on the offer, as well as the class sizes for this budget.
We thank you. We ask you to do the impossible year after year after year, and somehow you do it. And we can't thank you enough for what you do as district leaders. So thank you. And to the teachers, they ask the same of you. It all rolls downhill. So we say you gotta do it with less, and they tell you you gotta do it with less, and you do it, right? Year after year after year. We thank you. We are fighting for you. But thank you. All right. For the board takeoff, we have We have an executive session. I need a motion to move to executive session inviting Superintendent Benigni revolving a personnel matter.
So, move to enter executive session to discuss a personnel matter, inviting the superintendent in addition to the board.
Motion and second, all in favor?
Aye.
We are in executive session at 9:04.